Something just happened at the Canadian border. This has Coca Cola, PepsiCo and Nestle bosses in urgent meetings right now. I am looking at this information at this moment. When I first read the papers, I had to check 3 different places. It seemed too surprising to be true. On February 7, 2026, the Canadian government, led by Prime Minister Mark Carney, signed a new law called the Great Lakes Protection Act. This is not just another rule to help the environment. This is Canada basically turning off the flow of water exports from the Great Lakes. These lakes hold 21% of all the fresh surface water in the world. Wait, it gets even more serious. American companies have been taking out millions of gallons of water every year. They did this under a kind of informal deal that goes back to the 1909 Boundary Waters Treaty. That treaty was made to stop arguments over shared rivers and lakes. But it never expected the huge amount of business water removal we see today. Now that old deal is finished. The money effects are huge. We are talking about almost $890 billion in business activity every year that needs Great Lakes water. By the end of this message, you will see why this is not only a trade argument. It is a first look at the fights over resources that will shape the rest of the 21st century. Let me explain what others are not linking together. To understand what is happening today, we need to go back to things that have been growing for many years. The Great Lakes are not just large. They are the biggest group of freshwater lakes on Earth when you measure total area. They cover about 94,250 square miles. But here is the fact that changes everything. These lakes have been getting lower. Lake Michigan and Lake Huron reached almost record low levels in 2013. They were 29 inches below the usual long-term averages. Now, what people do not discuss much is why this matters for money and jobs. The Great Lakes support 1.3 million jobs directly. These jobs come from fields like shipping, making things in factories and farming. Another study showed that efforts to fix and restore the Great Lakes create $2 in economic good for every $1 spent. At the same time, the western part of the United States has its own water disaster. Lake Mead, the biggest reservoir in the country, fell to only 27% full in 2022. The Colorado River gives water to 40 million people in 7 states. It has been given out too much for many decades. States have been taking more water than the river really has. Here is where things get tricky. Starting around 2015, some American leaders started suggesting ideas. They talked about moving Great Lakes water to the dry Southwest. These were not strange or small ideas. Members of Congress from Arizona, Nevada, and California openly suggested building big pipes to send Great Lakes water west. Former President Trump mentioned the idea many times during his campaign events in 2023 and 2024. He said it was just common sense to send water from the north to places that need it. Canada heard all these talks. They began to calculate the risks. Here is what I am going to explain next. This is the part that kept me awake last night while I looked into it. Let me explain exactly how the water removal system worked. This is what Canada just stopped, and it is why big companies are so worried. Nestle Waters by itself was taking out about 1.1 million gallons of water each day from one well in Michigan. They paid only $200 per year for the permission. Let me explain what that means in money terms. They paid about 0.25 cents per 1,000 gallons. Then they put that water in bottles and sold it for around $1.50 per liter in stores. That comes to roughly $5,678 per 1,000 gallons. That is a price increase of more than 11 million% on the raw water. Wait, it gets even more serious. The whole drink industry uses about 1.39 liters of water to make every liter of the final product. Coca Cola's work in the Great Lakes area handles billions of gallons every year. PepsiCo has 38 factories in the Great Lakes states. These factories were built on one simple money idea. Water is basically free. Economists call this an externality. It is a cost that does not appear on the company's records because nature and the public pay for it. Now, what people are not discussing is the locked-in buildings and systems. These companies have spent billions on factories, supply lines, and delivery networks. All of them were made specially to use Great Lakes water. Coca Cola's bottling plant in Ontario, Canada, handles over 500 million liters every year. You cannot just move a bottling plant somewhere else. You cannot easily change water sources without big problems in checking quality. The amounts of minerals, the acid levels, these things change the taste. Brands have spent many years making customers expect that exact taste. This is where the money part becomes very interesting. When Canada passed the Great Lakes Protection Act, they did not just stop exports completely. They set up different levels of rules. There is a full ban on large amounts of water exports and moving water outside the Great Lakes area. There is a tax of 5 cents per gallon on water used for bottled drinks that go outside for sale. Extra permissions are needed for taking out more than 50,000 gallons per day. The money collected goes to fixing the Great Lakes and to projects for water safety for indigenous people. Let me show you what this means with real numbers. If Nestle kept taking 1.1 million gallons per day, and all of it was for bottled drinks sent away, they would now pay $55,000 each day. That is more than $20 million per year, instead of $200. But that is not the main point. The main point is that the law lets Canada lower or cancel permissions completely if lake levels fall below certain points. It puts nature's needs above company profits. This is something American business has not faced in a very long time. Here is where this whole thing enters an area that really surprised me when I started putting it together. The United States and Canada share the longest border between two countries in the world. 5,525 miles of it has no guards. Canada is the biggest trade partner for the United States. They traded $718.4 billion in goods and services in 2023. For more than 100 years, this friendship has worked on ideas of shared benefits and fair balance. But the Great Lakes Protection Act has shown a big change in power that most experts are not seeing. Now, what people are not talking about is the real map situation. The Great Lakes drainage area covers about 94,250 square miles in the US and 36,000 square miles in Canada. But here is the key fact. The narrow control points belong to Canada. The St. Lawrence Seaway, the main way out for Great Lakes shipping, goes completely through Quebec before it reaches the ocean. It carries $35 billion in goods each year and supports 237,000 jobs in both countries. Niagara Falls, which links Lake Erie and Lake Ontario, sits on the border. Canada controls the bigger part of the water flow on their side. The United States cannot just take Great Lakes water the way some countries might threaten to take oil in other places. The pipes and systems do not exist. The land layout does not help it. Any try to build such systems would take many years and need Canada's help at several steps. Here is where things get tricky again. The 2006 Great Lakes Street, Lawrence River Basin Water Resources Compact already stops U.S. states from moving water outside the area. 8 U.S. states and 2 Canadian provinces signed it. But that agreement has one big weak spot. It controls moves between states, not business taking and bottling. Companies found a way around it. If you put the water in bottles, it is no longer seen as moving water under the agreement. It becomes a product for sale. That is how Nestle and others worked for years. They followed the exact words of the law, but not its real purpose. Canada's new law closes that way around completely on their part of the border. About 30% of the Great Lakes water amount is in Canadian land. This gives them strong control over the whole system. What changes everything is this next part. American leaders have answered with warnings. Former President Trump called the law an act of economic war. He suggested the US should look again at our full trade connection with Canada. Republican senators from Great Lakes states have brought forward new laws to put taxes on Canadian electric power from water in return. But Canada is not stepping back. Prime Minister Carney said in public, "Water is not just a product to sell, it is life itself. We will not talk about trading the health of our nature for company short-term profits." This kind of strong talk is new between these two countries. We are seeing the nice polite talks of the 20th century fall apart because of 21st century shortages of important things. Let me explain the money effects that are already beginning. The stock market is starting to react to this, and most people investing have not understood why yet. In the first 48 hours after the law passed, drink company stocks showed quick ups and downs. Coca Cola fell 2.3%. PepsiCo dropped 1.8%. Nestle's shares went down 3.1% on markets in Europe. This may look small, but these companies together are worth more than $600 billion. A 2 to 3% drop means about $15 billion in value for owners disappeared in 2 days. Wait, it gets more serious. The drink business is only the part people can see easily. The Great Lakes support 56 steel factories in the area. These need huge amounts of water for cooling and making steel. They produce about 30% of all US steel. Farming in the Great Lakes area makes $7 billion each year from crops and $2 billion from animals. The area has more than 53,000 farms. Many use Great Lakes water for watering crops, either straight from the lakes or from underground water connected to them. Canada's rules do not directly stop US farm water use, but the example they set makes future plans uncertain. Now, what people are not discussing is how insurance companies are reacting. I had to read their reports 3 times when I first saw them. Big reinsurance companies, the ones that protect insurance companies, are now calling water access fights a real danger for businesses near the Great Lakes. Swiss Re, one of the biggest reinsurance companies in the world, put out a report in February 2026. It said changes in water rules across borders are a new big risk to industry in North America. In real life, this means insurance costs are going higher for any business that needs Great Lakes water. Some insurance plans now say they will not cover losses from government rules that limit water access. Here is what really changes the view. Companies have to make huge money choices right now about staying in this area. Coca Cola said in early February 2026 that they are looking at their long-term making plans because rules are changing. That is business talk, for we may need to shut some plants and let workers go. Nestlé has already said they will close their Ice Mountain bottling plant in Ontario, Canada. This affects 120 jobs right away. But here is the strange money twist that is appearing. While some places are closing, others are growing. Companies that make water cleaning tools, machines to take salt out of water, and systems to reuse water are getting a lot more investment. Xylem Inc., a company in water technology, saw its stock go up 8.7% in the week after the law passed. People investing are starting to see that lack of water is not just a problem to fix. It is a chance to make money. That idea is sending money to companies that gain from shortages instead of plenty. This is the part that kept me awake at night while I worked on this. The Great Lakes Protection Act is not happening alone. It is happening while climate change gets faster. This makes everything much more important right away. The Great Lakes area has gotten warmer by about 1.66 degrees since 1951. Winter temperatures have gone up even more by about 2.7 degrees. This makes a strange situation. Warmer air means more water evaporates from the lakes. But changing rain and snow patterns mean less steady new water from rain and melting snow. Lake Superior's average water temperature has gone up by 4.5 degrees since 1979. That is faster than the air around it. Warmer water holds less oxygen for fish and plants. It also makes evaporation happen more. One study says if warming keeps going, the Great Lakes could lose 5 to 15% of their water by 2050. Now, what people are not discussing is the ice cover cycle. The Great Lakes used to freeze a lot in winter. This cut down evaporation in the cold months. Ice on the Great Lakes has gone down by 71% since the 1970s. Less ice means more open water in winter. That means more evaporation all year. That means lower lake levels. That means less water for all the things we have talked about. At the same time, the American West has its own fast-growing problem. The huge drought in the Southwest is now in its 23rd year. It is the worst in 2,200 years. Tree ring studies show this. Climate computer models say the Colorado River area could lose 10 to 30% of its flowing water by the middle of this century. Here is where things get tricky again. Some people might ask if climate change affects the Great Lakes too. Why is Canada stopping exports now? The answer is that Canada looks at the same future predictions. They are making a smart choice to protect what they have while they can. The Canadian government's own report on climate says the Great Lakes area will have more changing rain. That means more big floods and dry times with less shore water overall. In that situation, letting companies take unlimited water today looks more and more dangerous. The new law is really a plan to handle climate change, but it looks like a trade rule. So where does this go from here? I want to go through the 3 most likely ways this could happen over the next 5 to 10 years. People I follow are now saying we are at a real turning point. In one path, the United States puts taxes back on Canadian goods in return. They would target things like wood, aluminum and power from water. Canada would answer with their own taxes. The USMCA trade deal, which took over from NAFTA in 2020, would face big pressure. Some law experts say water is clearly left out of USMCA rules. That means Canada's actions are allowed. But trade fights are not about what is legal. They are about who has more power. In this path, both countries lose money. But companies that need Great Lakes water the most face the hardest times. Factory jobs drop across the old industrial areas. Political anger grows. This is what most common experts think will happen. In another path, the US and Canada go back to talking. They make a changed agreement. It keeps some limits on large exports and moving water. It sets up a step-by-step tax system that is not as hard as the current 5 cents per gallon. It creates a shared US-Canada group to watch lake levels. It includes rules that change automatically based on lake level points. The International Joint Commission, which already handles some border water matters, would probably lead this. In this path, companies get some help. Canada keeps control over its resources. Both countries avoid a full trade fight. But the basic power balance has still changed. Water is now clearly seen as a limited thing that needs managing, not an endless free item. This third path is the one I find most interesting. It may be the hardest for people in America to believe. In this path, Canada's limits just stay in place. American companies change by moving their bottling work completely away from the Great Lakes area. They spend billions on ways to reuse water and make it more efficient. They switch to other water sources like removing salt from seawater. That is costly but getting more possible. They pass the extra costs to buyers with higher prices. In this path, the price of bottled water in North America goes up 15 to 30% over 5 years. Fancy water brands become even more expensive. Low-cost bottled water costs more too. Some companies leave the business completely, but the bigger money system adjusts. Just like charging for carbon became normal in many places, charging for water becomes the new normal. Most important, Canada's action encourages other places with lots of water around the world to take similar control over their own resources. Climate change does not pause for talks. Lake levels will keep changing. Dry times will get stronger. Every year that goes by makes it harder for Canada to change back because every year makes the nature reasons for protection stronger. So, here is what I want you to remember from this. The Great Lakes Protection Act is not really about water. It is about power. It is about who decides how we use the basic things that keep our modern world working. For 100 years, that power was with big companies. They built their businesses on the idea that nature was free. Water, clean air, steady weather, these were just things always there in the background. Canada has broken that idea. They have said no, water is not free. Nature has limits, and we will make sure those limits are followed even if it hurts company profits. Now, I am not here to say if this is good or bad. People have different views. Some see it as smart care for the environment. A government finally puts nature's long-term health before quick money gains. Others see it as a rule to protect their own country that will hurt workers, break supply lines and harm the connected North American economy both countries need. Some native groups in the Great Lakes area have said the law is overdue respect for water as something holy and limited. Others worry about money effects on their towns that depend on factory jobs. What no one can argue is that this is a big basic change. Taking control of resources is coming to North America. The idea of a free market in nature where money can go anywhere to take and use whatever it wants is being questioned at the top levels. The Great Lakes are only the start. We will see similar fights over lithium in the ground, special rare minerals, good farmland, and yes, water supplies all over the world. The time of plenty is finished. We are entering the time of deciding who gets what. The question of who does that deciding, markets, governments, or communities, will shape the money and political fights for the next 50 years. I want to know what you think. Are you in the Great Lakes area? Have you seen changes in water rules where you live? Do you think Canada is right to limit access, or will this cause more problems than it fixes?